I don't see it.
Mm, a lot of people do. All right. And we are live. Welcome, everybody, to Brain Milk, another episode with Adrian Polk here. You never really have anything to say at the beginning, do you?
Welcome.
Welcome. Welcome to the podcast Brain Milk with 2% fat. I want to do these a lot more often and just start interviewing more people, so you'll start seeing me talking with more people. But we've got a busy week in politics to discuss. Right off the bat, the Epstein Files kind of got voted to release almost unanimously in Congress. It's one of those like profiles in courage where Republicans like wait to the last second to all vote en masse when they're trying to prevent the release of the Epstein Files and protect Donald Trump for as long as possible. But then once the tide turns and it's pretty apparent that they're all going to have to vote to protect these rapey pedophiles in the most notorious sex trafficking ring maybe in American history, they had a change of heart. And any thoughts on the whole voting process? Or, obviously now it's like sitting on Trump's desk and he has 10 days to sign it or something before it automatically goes into effect or something like that.
Well, I would say that talking about profiles in courage, like the fact that it passed like unanimously almost except for one vote. So like, why couldn't they get 218
Clay
without
Higgins,
that one member from New Mexico or whatever, Arizona to do it? And then talk about like profiles in courage, like who would have seen that Lauren Boebert and Marjorie Taylor Greene are the stalwarts against Trump?
and Nancy Mace.
Yeah, Nancy Mace. You would have predicted that like a year ago, 2 years ago.
Yeah. Do you think Trump's going to sign it? Or I think Pam Bondi already announced just like an hour ago that the Democrats and the Congress is entitled to get all of the Epstein files that they're legally entitled to. So a little bit of legalese there. They opened up, despite Pam Bondi saying that the investigation was over, saying that like in a courtroom, to hide the fact that there's more files that need to come out. Now they're reopening the investigation and looking into like Bill Clinton and some other Democrats. It would be nice if maybe some of those people just came clean and said, yeah, I did it, but also I saw Trump, just take one for the team and just say everything he knows about maybe Trump's misconduct.
I mean, maybe. I don't know. I think there'll probably be a bunch of excuses of why they can't show everything. And what Republicans were saying, they're going to delete every Republican in there and just release the files with Democrats. Yeah. So, I mean, it is kind of smart. They're setting themselves up like Trump spent all of 2016 saying, I can't release my tax returns because there's an open investigation. It's like, I can't release
the audit
Epstein files because there's open investigation, except for all these Democrats. Here you go.
It's a funny lesson for politicians where basically you can just commit so much fraud that if you're, technically, if you're literally being audited, which Trump probably wasn't, but you could just say, I'm being audited forever and just do any amount of crime so you can never reveal anything because it's always under investigation.
Yeah, I mean, the excuses are legion, right? You could just say, oh, my accountant told me there could be under an investigation or whatever. The plausible deniability is always there.
Yeah. Now I have a comedy piece I'm publishing tomorrow, but kind of thinking along the premise of maybe Thanksgiving will be extra quiet and apolitical this year. Like all your MAGA uncles, the perspective of the article that I wrote is like, I'm your MAGA uncle and I promise not to make politics as political as I did last year or something to that effect. And, people are already saying Donald Trump's a lame duck president. It's pretty astounding that, he hasn't even been in office for an entire year yet. And Axios came out that Ted Cruz is like laying the groundwork to run. J.D. Vance, basically we're getting to the point, especially with the Epstein files, that a lot of Republicans have to go on record defending this stuff or maybe start distancing themselves from Trump and maybe look to their own reelection in 2026 or 2028 and maybe kind of be like rats jumping off the sinking ship.
Yeah, we'll see. It'll also be funny because people throw their hand in the ring to run for president. They're all going to be asked, what would you do different in Trump's first term or second term? It'll be funny to watch them squirm out of that one. Like, I don't know. Yeah. I think more politicians should have the courage to be like, yeah, I would do something different. I'm a different person. I have different goals. And then whether you're talking about Kamala Harris and saying, oh, I couldn't think of anything. It's like, you should have been prepared with one, cookie cutter, very simple, very tactful thing you would do differently. But it'll be really entertaining to see the Republicans have to deal with that now.
In her case, the border, an obvious, low-hanging fruit to have said, I could have done it differently. Yeah. It's probably Trump's best issue. there was also some news that Pam Bondi and Lindsay Halligan, who's the lawyer that is going after James Comey, apparently like did not get the approval. Did not basically she told the grand jury that they didn't need like probable cause or something, and then the grand jury didn't sign off on the indictments. Like the foreperson of the jury signed off on it, and they like apparently manipulated some of the paperwork and then took that to the judge to launch this indictment of James Comey. And now a lot of legal scholars are kind of saying that this is like not only will be like instantly thrown out of court the second a real judge sees this and like the horrendous like illegal route that they took to like doing what is clearly a political prosecution of a political opponent, but people are saying that also Pam Bondi and Halligan for sure should be like disbarred and no longer be allowed to be lawyers. Pam Bondi apparently signed off on this like twice, that like she approved, the efforts that they're putting together for this James Comey indictment. Any thoughts on that? I know that's still kind of breaking news.
Other than it's just shameful now.
Yeah.
It's like, how can you do your job the worst way possible in the most inept, incompetent way possible for the most unethical, immoral thing possible? It's like the trifecta of
Yeah.
like the worst thing you can do in government. You're going to
Yeah.
abuse your office. You're going to do it in an unethical way. You're going to lie to the court, and you're going to lie about lying
Yeah.
while
Right.
you're doing basically the opposite of what you should be doing in a way that won't get you your goal, which is so funny. It's like people say, oh, Trump is so resourceful. He's working so hard. It's like everything he does is like the most
Half-assed and
ineffective way
lazy.
of doing it.
Yeah.
Yeah. And they like, whether it's like, oh, we're going to do, I mean, the first term had a lot more of these. I think a lot of the people around him have kind of figured out some of the federal government rules, regulations, laws they're
Yeah.
trying to break now a little better. But like, I mean, the first term was so great. Like they were like, we're going to do this ban. We're going to do this like religious ban on people coming in this country. And it's just immediately thrown out. It's like, wow, way to do your
Yeah.
homework.
And the
How
first time
excessive.
around, they actually had like real politicians, real like legal scholars and lawyers, like kind of traditional establishment Republicans that filled out the administration. And like a lot of Trump's lawyers and like the White House, like lawyers and stuff, like really protected Trump and insulated like him from like his really unconstitutional kind of worst ideas. But this time around, it's like all sycophants. It's all people that just are, sucked up to him for years on Fox News weekend shows and things like that. So he doesn't have like the chief of staff, like a John Kelly, to go and just kind of, protect the office of the presidency, which is like what especially a lot of those like legal roles are designed to do. Is like you're not even really protecting the person, like Trump specifically, but you're protecting the office of the presidency and everything. And
Well,
it is nice
unfortunately,
to see. Yeah, go
I was
ahead.
going to say, unfortunately, you don't need that role anymore if the president genuinely believes that Article 2 allows him to do whatever he wants. And then the
Yeah.
Congress says, yeah, we're not going to fight it. And I don't know. It's kind of a breakdown of Madisonian democracy in this country. The whole
To
checks
say
and
the
balances
least.
thing. Like, yeah.
Yeah. Well,
Well,
they
that's like
talked
the
about
joke.
that.
People always say that like if what would the founding fathers do if they came back? It's like people have said like the first thing they'd think is like Congress isn't doing anything anymore.
Yeah,
Like
that's
that would
weird.
be like the big thing that would really shock them more
Yeah.
than it, because they expected like wannabe tyrants. They expected people who wanted to abuse the office, who wanted to enrich
Right.
themselves. That's why they put the emoluments clause in, right? But the idea that like all those elected members of Congress who all have their own individual, independent, like power bases within their own states and districts would just say, I don't want to do anything. I don't want to exercise any power and I don't care anymore is
Yeah.
shocking.
Well, a lot of it is like, back to that profiles of courage thing. It's that Congress does not want to be responsible for anything unpopular anymore. And everything is so media obsessed. And they're so like, they just want to keep their jobs and keep their staffs and salary and like all the benefits of the job, that they don't want to do anything that might remotely be unpopular. So if you look at, especially like a lot of the war authorizations, like Obama in Syria, where he said like Republicans were just shitting on him nonstop for like letting Assad cross the red line, with the chemical weapons or whatever. And then Obama went to Congress and said, okay, vote for me to go to war in Syria. And they said, nope, we don't want to do that because they don't want to have to put their like names on the line or their reputations, or if it goes bad, be responsible for that in any way. And you can kind of look at that on most things right now. They don't want to do anything with the tariffs like that Trump's doing, threatening to pull us out of NATO, screwing over all our allies, like our treaty allies. Republicans really just don't want to have to do anything anymore and have like literally any vote be attached to their legacy.
Well, it's odd because you can't really get ahead of your party leadership right now because your party leadership is Donald Trump, and like you can't get ahead of the president. You want to
Yeah.
do anything? They already, the amount of flip-flopping that goes on of like things that Trump wants and has wanted to do that goes against completely, 40 years of Republican ideology and political efforts.
The
So it's kind
free
of funny. It's
trade
like,
and all
like, yeah, I mean, to some extent, right? Like the conservative party typically is a party of no because like they want to conserve things. They want to not change things. It's normally the left-leaning people, liberals and stuff who want to push the country forward. Sometimes it's in a genuinely progressive way. Sometimes it's like in, a feel good utopian kind of way. And it's kind of Republicans or conservatives' jobs in general to basically fight that and say no. But if you don't believe government should be doing anything, you don't believe you should be doing anything, and you're afraid to do anything because you can't get ahead of your party leader, and your party leader is old and doesn't want to do anything, it's like where there's no room for action, right?
and doesn't know how the laws or government works.
Yeah, I mean, did any Republican in Congress really care that like they just went home for 7 weeks and didn't do
Yeah.
anything because like if they came back, they'd have to let in that member of Congress and swear them in and let the Epstein votes. Like, I don't know, if I were a member of Congress and like they were like, don't come back for 7 weeks. We're just not going to come back until we figure out a solution for this Epstein thing. Like, wouldn't you be mad? Like,
Yeah.
we're like all those people who work on those committees for their like constituents and stuff. Like, if you're from a farm state, like, yeah, Congress, we're taking a 7 week vacation. Like, I don't know why more of them aren't mad. And I don't
Yeah.
know. I don't know what the
Well,
recourse is at because you're not going to like bring down the Speaker of the House because hey, they couldn't pick another one if it took 4 weeks. But
yeah,
the other
right.
thing is like, what are you going to fight for? Are you going to like, Trump was fine with it. So I don't know. That's a long winding thing, but they don't have any desire to do anything, and most of them lack the power to do anything they want to do anyway if it's not, coming from on high.
Yeah. Well, Mike Johnson wants to assure you that they did the best work of their careers over this government shutdown.
Well, it's so funny because like we talked about this last time. It's so funny that like the media goes to people like Mike Johnson and asks him anything. It's like, what is he going to say? It's like the truthful thing. Like, no, he's not going to say. It's going to say, and both sides have this. Obviously, you're not going to get Chuck Schumer call out the entire Democratic Party. He's not going to say, I've never liked Bernie Sanders. He's not going to like badmouth like AOC. So it's like, what are you going to do? It's like they're not going
Yeah.
to. When Biden was president, like they were. I don't know. I think it's a little asymmetric because I think there were plenty of people who did criticize Biden on the left, but you don't really see that on the
Yeah.
right now. But we'll see if that's breaking with this lame duck
Yeah.
period.
I want to float an idea by you. This is not something I'm willing to die on the hill for, but it's an idea I've kind of been playing around with. The idea that like maybe we should go back to the days of like pork barrel spending and letting like, Congress people like bribe themselves for their votes to get like big projects passed in their house. But kind of going with that, I think like more and more Americans should be like the political system should try to be less so bipolarly national, and that we should go back to the days where Virginians were like, fuck everyone who's not a Virginian. Like I'm a Virginian before I'm an American. But it would be nice if you kind of went back to the states as laboratories kind of
Why
thing.
would that be nice?
Well, no, I'm just saying it's like right now in this era where Congress doesn't do anything, partly it's because we're so bipolar and like rabidly hyper partisan that like nothing gets done. But it would be nice if more members of Congress cared more about their legacies and the work that they're able to do for their constituents, and to stop just like every single vote being a party line vote. It would be nice if you actually had, I guess I'm like trying to figure out some way to incentivize Congress to like take serious the reality that they have more power than the presidency and they have more responsibility for like the law than the executive branch and for like directing the direction of the country and a lot of our policy.
I mean, maybe I'm trying to think through that. That's an interesting thing. Like, if people, we've talked about this before, but like the idea of like more people caring more about state issues and pushing things down in states would probably be better. And that also means that like on things that aren't civil rights related, like the political parties should allow states to do things. Like we've talked about education department, but yeah, it's an interesting, thought provoking thing. I don't know. Like, unfortunately, I think like the ethical part of me means that like if you have 50 states and on average, half the states are going to be below average. It's like, is the federal government going to do nothing to help the states that are below average? And what happens if you have accumulations
we've talked about them before where Democrats just keep losing elections because they try to do those big sweeping national policy things to help the 50% of all these states like worse off constituents. And then they get fucked over and shit on for the effort to try it because it's not perfect. And then in those red states, the governors and the state legislatures that are dominated by Republicans do everything they can to make those efforts fail, right? So it's like at some point, like Democrats try to do the good thing for everybody, get shit on, and then lose the next election because it wasn't that effective and maybe can't be. So maybe the states, not like shitting on people and like dropping them completely from your attention, but it's just, I don't know, maybe Mississippi should start electing candidates in the legislature and governor that like want Mississippi to not be at the bottom of education and maternal mortality and like, child disease rates and things like that. I mean, like, what else can you do to just get people to start voting for better candidates? I don't know.
Yeah, I mean, that's an interesting thing. That was a debate with like SNAP and everything during the shutdown. Do you try to save people from their votes and their votes for Trump and the Republicans in government? For example, like, if a lot of people think that the president's going to magically save everything every 4 years and that they don't have to care about local and state elections or politics, like maybe it would be a good reminder that hey, the federal government's not going to help you. Like, pretty much every federal benefit that helps one state more disproportionately than another, in a way, I guess you could make an argument, is saving the elected leaders in that state from the people, because it's basically tempering or buffering some of the worst effects they'd be facing. So that's an interesting, thought-provoking thing. Yeah.
Yeah. Changing pace a little bit, I had a great achievement with the Halfway Post where Nancy Mace called me retarded online last week. That was kind of fun. I'm still waiting for Donald Trump to be aware of me personally and call me an enemy of the people. I think that would be a real...
Well, I think, have you taken that intelligence test that Trump took? Because until you do, it's possible you are retarded. Nancy Mace is correct.
Yeah, possibly.
Person.
Yeah.
What was it?
Camera, person, TV, I don't know, something like that. But it is kind of funny. A lot of people were dunking on her in the comments for that one, for falling for like a comedian that like all my stuff's very clearly labeled satire and comedy. And but people were dunking on her for using the R word, for telling a lot of her constituents to burn in hell or rot in hell or something like that. It is kind of funny that like everything is so media obsessed with our politics right now that like the deplorable comment that was so bad for Hillary Clinton, but like on the other hand, like Donald Trump constantly calls like most of America like vermin and idiots, and he calls all our past presidents and politicians like morons who don't know how to win wars or do like that are don't have his genius. And it's just kind of funny that like this kind of media ecosystem that we have just incentivizes like our politicians and elected officials to be like some of the worst, most like fire like bomb throwing like dickheads on social media.
Well,
I don't know. Any thoughts on that?
Well, I mean, it's kind of weird. It's like a weird, if you look back, or if you think of like looking back at this time 100 years from now, like the amount of power social media companies have and how the algorithms basically just made 300 million Americans pissed off all the time and angry and irate, and a sizable percentage of them believed in abject conspiracy theories with no basis in fact. And like, they do those studies where like you look at like, I've had this before on YouTube, like you click on an ad or something, or you click on like one video that's suggested like about aliens or something, and then it's just like boom, like your whole thing like ruins your whole like feed for like a couple days while it like figures out you don't actually want to watch those videos. And people talk about that like it's an unfortunate thing, but I don't know. I think that's got more. I don't know what percentage of our problems would you kind of throw on that?
Probably most of our problems. Like I think definitely I mean, this is kind of going off politics, but like the mental health issues and like everybody diagnosing themselves with anxiety and cutting themselves off from like public social life. And people don't party as much anymore. They don't drink as much. They don't go out with friends as much. Sex is down. Like just, in a weird way, actually, the prison population is like kind of like collapsing right now because so many people are just indoors all the time on their phones and screens that like people don't really commit crimes anywhere near as much as they used to. And that's like,
the prison population's going down?
Yeah, prison population's going down, yeah. And that like they think in a few years it might be like kind of like destroy the industry, Not that there should be an industry, but obviously there is where, states just pay these companies a ton of money to house criminals. But I would say probably most of our societal problems are directly related to everyone having like smartphones and just scrolling all day. Like, I mean, I think about this a lot with young people and like, the gender wars kind of that are really being highlighted on like the terminally online people. Where
terminally
like
online,
yeah, we're just constantly scrolling and seeing like all these lives that are kind of better than yours, but it's all fake and it's all manufactured. And, it's like, for instance, There was a thing on TikTok. It was like boo baskets for Halloween. Like boyfriends would get their girlfriends boo baskets, like little goodie bags. And then it became a thing where it's like, my boyfriend didn't get me a boo bag. He doesn't love me. I should leave him. Like he's a piece of shit, blah, blah, blah. It's like, this literally was just invented like 3 weeks ago. And all of these people with the videos of boo baskets, it's like, those are content creators. Those women made it for themselves, pretended their boyfriends gave it. Like everything about it is fake. And now it's just a new thing for us to be upset about and hate our significant other for being lazy and stuff like that. And it's just like, what do you do with that?
That's funny. Well, yeah, everything on the internet's fake. I've noticed this before. Like,
Yeah.
you watch like a video on like AI, and you're like, "Oh, that's interesting." You get another video, and it's like, "Oh, here's some stuff about AI," and it's like literally the same video. So you have different content creators literally just ripping each other off, and it's like,
Yeah. Yeah.
"Wow, there's a lot of fucking smart people in AI," but they just used AI to write a video about AI and copied other AI videos about AI and what's going on. And it's like,
Yeah.
huh. And it's like everybody's chasing the same thing, which, people make money on social media companies, so power to them. It's quite the hustle, but people have to remember
Yeah.
that literally everything online is fake.
Plus, there's so many bots. Like a lot of Republican, I guess Twitter is like tightening its standards or something to get rid of bots. And like Cat Turd, for instance, famous Cat Turd, that has like the ear of the Republican Party. He was complaining. I think he's like losing like 3,000 followers a day right now. And it's like, yeah, you moron. They were all bots.
They're all
You're
fake.
just like, yeah, you're like one of the most vitriolic people online that's just hardcore pro-Trump and shitting on Democrats all day. It's just these like bad actor bots from like foreign countries are just highlighting and sharing everything you do. And then people have noticed that like, I think it's like 9 a.m. Russian time is where like a lot of political activity starts picking up on our social media. When it's like a weird time at night for us or whatever. But yeah, the Russian morning day is like when all those Russian paid bot farmers like start getting to work. That like you notice a big uptick in some of the more vitriolic content online for us.
No, that's funny. Katie's been doing research in like companies and stuff. So you go on a company's website, one she was going to work with, but you look at their social media, like YouTube account, and like all of the comments are like in Bangladeshi. And it's like it's like a small company. They have 500,000 followers somehow, and it's like a bunch of Bangladeshi comments like saying "praise Allah, praise Allah," and it's like I don't think this has to do with this medicine stuff, like medical education stuff.
Yeah, right.
Yeah, but
Good news. We mentioned it earlier, but Ted Cruz is laying the groundwork. Perennial presidential candidate Ted Cruz is going to run again. He did not run in 2020, which I guess kudos to him for kind of reading the room and maybe not seeing it was worth the effort to get in the mud with Trump. But definitely running this time. Any words of advice for him or any thoughts on his decision?
I don't know. It's funny. We were talking earlier. It's like, yeah, I would prefer Ted Cruz over this, over JD Vance. So, like, power
Yeah.
to him. He's like the best of a bad situation, right? Like you
That's
were
some real
saying, like,
Stockholm syndrome going on that we're like, Ted Cruz, please become president.
yeah, and he's like probably going to be the candidate most likely to have read the Constitution before.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Like being a constitutional lawyer, and obviously it would be nice to have a president who doesn't have like a 96% like Stalin-esque level of support among their own party people.
Yeah.
You know?
Yeah, he's not very likable, so he won't have that cult. Somebody commented from You Ready Grandma, you'd think Ted Cruz would be a climate change activist with his fear of extreme weather.
Yeah.
That's a funny guy. Yeah.
Yeah.
Hey, he's very hip to the winter disasters that are increasing with the higher energy levels in the atmosphere. Who
I
else
think
would
it'll be
run?
interesting to see what they talk about, like what people in the campaign field, like or campaign trail. What are they going to talk about? What they want to do? It's like for the last 8 years, Republicans really haven't had a want to do a whole lot. If you think of like the major issues of our time right now, like can you think of anything like positively progressive? Not progressive in like the Democratic progressive, but like making progress on any problem, like whether it's minimum wage, housing stock, climate change, like all the things that are going on with like has anyone put forth any like serious proposals for anything like
Not in the
and,
Republican Party.
yeah, like I mean even like healthcare, right? They're worried about healthcare going into next year, so like what if we give everyone $2,000 in an HSA? And people like pointing out like that's the lowest hanging fruit of ideas you could possibly offer, and it does nothing to solve any of the problems,
Yeah.
and like it'll probably exacerbate it, make it worse, but like that's like literally just throwing like I don't know, little sugar candies to like the people. You know what I
Yeah,
mean? It like
right.
doesn't do anything to solve the problem in a structural way. But
Yeah, I
I don't
mean,
know.
when you look at Republican campaign videos, it's all about like, no trans. It's like basically just saying no
It's
to like
culture
these
war stuff.
boogeymen. Yeah, it's culture war stuff. It's kind of straw man Democratic demons that they're fighting. They're shooting things in their videos with just Nancy Pelosi written on it. It's really just making up things about what Democrats allegedly want to do and fighting these made up boogeymen. So who else do you think would run, though? I think Rubio will run. Marco Rubio. Rand Paul has run before. He's been a pretty vocal critic of a lot of stuff with Trump. Lindsey Graham clearly just likes being in the room with other ambitious men. He gets excited from that, I guess.
It'll be interesting.
Like,
It's going to be a wild field, right? Because there's a lot of Republicans
it's a
jumping
jump
in.
ball. The Plinko could
Yeah,
go anywhere.
yeah, and I at least like that. All the people who are talking about getting in just signifies that JD Vance has no future in the Republican Party and is not the heir apparent, which is nice.
Well, I mean, but don't you think he does? I mean, he kind of has that like Tucker Carlson, borderline Nick Fuentes kind of wing of the party of just, I'm not racist, but here's all the groups of people I think shouldn't count as Americans and we should not let them in this country. Like where it's so identity politics adjacent where like at the end of the day, can you explain that? And they can't explain it without getting into some like obvious, just, like racist interpretation of the policies. What do you think, though? Does JD Vance have the shoe in to be the early front runner? Like, do
I
you
don't
think
think
Trump will
so.
endorse him, or do you think Trump will do some kind of like apprentice style thing and then not even endorse anybody at the end because that would mean he has to give up some attention to somebody else and admit that obviously his time in politics is coming to an end?
Yeah, I don't know. I think he probably won't endorse. Well, first off, it would be weird because if you endorse someone, you're inherently like, "Here's my power, go run with it," and I
Yeah,
think that'll be hard for him. I think we'll see what happens with him trying to announce like a third term if he's going to do that. Do you think he'll do that? Because that'll really change. I mean, really, what you're
yeah,
asking a question hinging on the fact of how long will Trump pretend he may or may not be able to or can
right.
run for a third term.
Yeah, it would be funny. I don't think he really will try, at least and especially now, he's so unpopular, and some people are even coming to the idea that Republicans are kind of using this opportunity to like shank him and maybe just impeach him or like remove him in some way with this Epstein stuff and kind of opening up the floodgates of some real unpopular things that may or may not come out from that. But like, I think even like Republicans in Congress now, like what is that going to be like in a year from now? They're going to have to distance themselves from ICE. ICE is so unpopular and getting booed everywhere they go, right?
I'm
The tariffs are screwing everything up. Standard
Yeah.
of living costs are going up. Like at what point do Republicans be like, hey, I care a little bit more about my job than the ego of this lame duck narcissist. So I'm going to kind of pretend MAGA is a direction Trump has like strayed from, or maybe just say, I don't need Trump at all and I'll just go it alone.
Yeah, we'll see. I think it'll be interesting to watch because if the economic indicators get worse, it'll be funny because Trump is uh, naturally unable to admit fault, and
Yeah.
like how much of and it's funny too because like a lot of presidents have like some plausible deniability that like the previous guy had something to do with it, and sometimes like the previous guy did have a lot to do with it. And then like with Trump though, just like the wild economic policy swings that it like from tariffs of going up to
Yeah.
down to this to that, immigration, the fact that like we're bailing out like a country that has like, farmers that compete with our farmers. It's like everything is like economist 101. Like you could draw on a piece of like a napkin why a lot of these policies aren't going to work the way they think they do. So it'll be funny because like he is like compared to most presidents, unable to blame anyone else but his own stuff. So that'll be interesting. What was the second part of your question?
I don't know. Do you think JD Vance will be good at distancing himself and or taking credit for the good things of MAGA that people are not upset about? Do you think
I don't
this
know.
will be like an albatross on JD Vance's neck?
He's I don't know if you agree with this, but like when I hear him talk, he seems to have like he's usually pretty good about having like at least a moderately thought out reason why like the thing you think isn't true. And I'm not saying it's a good argument, but he has one and then he just sticks
Yeah.
on that and says
Or
it.
some
And
deflection that like at least is capable for getting through the soundbite.
yeah, I mean, it's like the joke you made before. It's like I'm not a racist, but here's all the groups of Americans I don't like for their specific ethnicity and religious
Yeah.
beliefs, and it's like that's not a
That
bigot
I
at
think
all.
are too different to belong in our culture. Yeah.
Yeah, and frankly, if you think that's bigoted, you're the problem, not me. Yeah,
Mhm.
that's what he says on pretty much everything. So, do I think he'll be able to distance himself? Like, I don't know. That'll be I mean, that's the same thing that all of them are going to do, right? They're going to have to say that Trump was the best. Well, unless like the Epstein Files
Yeah.
really take him down. But if that were
Yeah.
true, I would think like, if you were JD Vance, like, and you were a real son of a bitch, like you could be finding ways to leak some of that shit. Like, and
Yeah.
since that's not happening, like if anyone has more to gain from a shank to Donald Trump, it's JD Vance, who, they're still in the first year of their term. So, I mean, you can, if this Epstein stuff came out quick and it really did sink Trump, you'd have most of
Yeah.
a term.
Well, it is a great opportunity for Republicans to finally just get rid of Trump. Like if they just out all his files and then impeach him real quick and just get a more sensible person that's not a ludicrous idiot like Donald Trump obviously is. Like, you have to think like Mitch McConnell, do you think he regrets not like impeaching Trump like the first time after January 6th and he could have ended all of this? Like John, the way the Democrats passed through the unanimous consent with the Epstein files as soon as it got to the Senate and they didn't do any of the amendments, apparently Mike Johnson and a lot of Republicans in the House were kind of expecting for them to do to give Trump more like plausible excuses on not releasing some of the info he doesn't want to release. Like, could this be Republicans shanking him and just getting him out of the way? Like that was pretty deft. No one wants to compliment Chuck Schumer right now, but I mean, apparently he went right to the floor. I was like, let's get unanimous consent on this. Let's not do the vote. Let's not do any amendments. And you got to say that it worked pretty well. And it seemed to catch Trump and Pam Bondi and like a lot of the lawyers and stuff like off balance, right?
I love that comment. Yeah, you're right. But Mitch McConnell.
Which one? Which comment? You got to shout it out.
Him for his terrarium.
That is good. I've done a lot of jokes over the years from the Halfway Post about him looking like a reptile and like him, a lot of jokes about him getting caught masturbating in the Louisville Herpetarium.
No, but that's a good question.
Shout out to you. You ready, Grandma? You feel me?
As Mitch McConnell looks and the fullness of his career in life, yeah, like does he really regret a bunch of stuff? Like, I don't know. I mean,
this is Mitch McConnell right now.
Yeah. That's fucked up.
Yeah. Let's see. In terms of the Republican primary, do you think someone like Adam Kinzinger or Liz Cheney or like some like never Trumper should jump in? Do you think it's even worth it? Should they just basically be Democrats now because they kind of already are on a lot of issues?
I think it would be good for like a bulwarky type thing where it's like by them being there and they can
at least being on the stage and stuff.
Yeah, and just call people out and like force other people to respond to them. Like, is that kind of a sadistic thing to want to do? Absolutely. And people with like families and stuff, like knowing like I don't know, making a presidential run you're going to lose has to be one of the least effective things you could possibly do with your life, I guess, unless you were just trying to like make more money on the speaking circuit. But I don't know. That would be nice. It'd be great.
But that gets back to my point about it'd be nice if people like cared more about their legacies, like their Wikipedia pages. Like you can look on Wikipedia page elections and see like Ron Johnson got like 9% of the vote or whatever, running third party in 2016. It's weird because like Congress is like ostensibly like the room of the most ambitious people in the entire country and like the most ambitious people from the state governments that move up and then get elected to like nationwide or federal office. And it's just weird to see so many of them roll over and just, especially maybe it's just a part of our politics, the first past the post system, like our fucked up media and like how you get ahead by just kind of having no morals or, shame or, humility whatsoever. But I don't know. I guess we can't go. I would love to go back to the days where like you just had like 7 people running that had like all these weird coalitions and it wasn't just like the one Democrat against the one Republican and then like just a handful of arguably corrupt people that are like getting money somehow or connections or jobs in the future to like just be spoilers and fuck over the one party they can like squeeze like a percent away from, like, Jill Stein or
to get some dumb
the libertarians.
Bureaucracy. Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, that should be something right now. Where are the libertarians right now? Democrats should be spending so much money on trying to make the Libertarian Party a big thing in terms of like a good kind of political scheme to just steal a bunch of votes from Republicans. But with all this ICE stuff, like what is libertarian about that? They constantly scream about guns to go after a tyrannical government. And now we have this like paramilitary force that is basically occupying U.S. cities and abducting people who often, keep coming out to be citizens with paperwork. They're just like walking their dog and and get arrested. Like, where is the patriotism from all these libertarians who have constantly been telling us they are locked and loaded and ready for the first sign of tyranny, you know?
Yeah, it is weird. Plus, like the logic, I was just thinking about this while you were talking, the logic of like ICE and stuff, and like just like, okay, so you're to go out and scare all of the brown people you're racially profiling, thinking are immigrants, and like so like isn't the statistical probability of actual legal aliens like they're not going to be out in public as much? So then more and more and more you're going to get people who are like, I'm fucking American citizen. I'm going to go out and go to Target or whatever. So it's like it's just weird that that aspect of it's like doomed to fail, and they're going to get more American citizens as they go. But you're right. Like, where are the libertarians? I think part of it is probably a lot of them don't are probably on the right wing anyway, and probably a lot of them don't like immigration the way that other people do. They probably don't
Yeah,
like
and
the
they're happy that it's
amount of
their guy that's
immigration.
being authoritarian.
Yeah, and it's like, yeah, I mean, some of them might, tell themselves like, oh, well, I don't like everything he does, like, and as if that justifies kind of what's going on. But I don't know. That's a good question. It's an ethical question that libertarians should look inside deeply and figure out
Yeah.
where they stand.
yeah, yeah, some self-introspection.
Yeah.
Here's another thing I was thinking about. It's like the idea of guns everywhere and like like ICE militias kind of going through and like terrorizing people. But isn't that the thing that conservatives constantly talk about? America being like the greatest country and it's so peaceful here and like our culture is so civil and nice. But now we're going to have ICE agents everywhere with guns. Like they want everyone to be armed anyway. And they're constantly pitting us against each other as if everybody, like if you go out in the street in a big city, you will die, you will get robbed. But like the idea of ICE agents everywhere, like you go to Greece and countries around the world, and they have like on busy street corners like busloads full of just armed troops with assault rifles and things like that. And that's one thing that's nice about America is we don't have that. We don't have guns everywhere. Immigrants really do assimilate to this culture and can walk to the grocery store and not threaten and kill their neighbors. And like America really is a pretty safe civil society. But it seems like Republicans are trying to ruin all that with some of their ideas, even though they say they're like heavy policing and arm everybody ideas are to go back to that like 1950s Goldilocks kind of culture of America that they have such nostalgia for, you know?
Yeah. No, I agree completely. It is weird.
Let's talk about Strike of Lightning. We both watched that on the Garfield presidency. I highly recommend it. It's a pretty good series. A lot of people are talking about it. It's just 4 episodes. They're an hour each, so pretty easy listening and watching. But it's about the Garfield presidency and then his assassination. He died after, like 6 months in office or something like that? 4 months of being president. So what were your thoughts on Strike of Lightning?
Yeah, I thought it was really entertaining. It's funny because like people always talk about, I don't know, this coming from like an international relations like IR thing. Like, do people matter? Is it do countries have their own interests and stuff? And it's like you look at the juxtaposition that they show between Garfield and Chester Arthur, like how different they were. One was like a
Yeah.
moral guy who just lived on his farm with his wife and wanted to do everything, kind of very religious, wanted to be righteous and stuff. And then Chester Arthur, played by Nick Offerman, just a raging, corrupt, autocratic
Drunk.
thug,
Yeah.
drunk thug. And it's like, yeah, like I think, I mean, there's a lot of what ifs in American like history, like if Abraham Lincoln had survived, all that stuff. Like, I think that's a really good question: is what would have happened if Garfield had been able to finish his term, and if he was really into supporting and helping African Americans, like the TV show depicted. That'd be huge for this country. How different the next 100 years would have been. Doing things like it's nice that Chester Arthur pushed through some of the bills on public corruption and patronage that he wanted, but what would have 3.5 more years or 7.5 more years? What would that have done? How would have that affected the 1880s, 1890s and stuff? The Gilded Age, would it have been a little more sense of fairness and equality percolating through the political system after that? So I don't know. It's interesting. It's more of a hypothetical what if, since it's kind of like, well, as they point out in the show, it's more of like a trivia thing now. His whole presidency, not a lot came from it, and he, as a man, like was just a random member of the House who vaulted his way to the presidency, and 5 months later was dead. So it's
yeah. One thing that I had to take away is just like how much of politics at the end of the day is still like, it's very abstract and we watch these things on TV and don't really know it, but there's still physical people in physical rooms doing relatively menial tasks of like paperwork and like general bureaucracy. But like the scene,
Or
where they're
arguing.
doing the
Yeah.
speeches. Yeah. And Garfield just gets up and gives this great speech that inspires like basically one guy in the first vote to just keep voting Garfield. And then like, what was it, like 38 rounds of voting of the Republican convention later, there's no candidate and they all just start voting Garfield because like the other three candidates, there's just no compromise between the three of them. And so like, the great person idea of history, it is some people like random people doing kind of random things that have these like big effects on politics. And that's one thing that I hate when people are like, oh, both parties are the same, nothing matters. But it like literally does. Like, Mamdani in New York City defeating Cuomo, like just a guy that's pretty young. And, anybody who had like kind of like political expertise would be like, don't do it. You're too young. You'll never beat Cuomo. You're not ready for the job or whatever. But like the guy ran, inspired a bunch of people and now he's going to be mayor of the biggest city. So like things really do matter with the people that are involved.
Well, it also shows like little tipping points too, which is kind of, you ever read that book by Malcolm Gladwell? I mean, it's kind of interesting. Like it is a thing. It happens all the time. Like even if you look at Trump, right? Donald Trump only won the primaries for the Republicans in 2016 because like some of the Republicans wouldn't get out because they were all convinced Trump would flame out and then they would take his voters. And so, that little plurality thing that he kept winning throughout the primaries until he won was kind of a fluke, which everyone obviously talks about.
Yeah,
and
right.
There's the idea that like, if 100,000 voters voted differently in 3 states, Trump in the last 10 years, none of this would have happened. The Republican Party would have talked about how they got shellacked by Obama twice and Hillary Clinton won, and they would have completely changed. There's no way in 2016, if Hillary Clinton had won, that Trump would have any lasting influence on the Republican Party at all. Like with Speaker of the House Paul Ryan literally preparing a speech to say like, the Republican Party that the base that supports Trump is wrong. We need to empower like not fight so hard against these wedge issue culture issues and stuff, and not be so anti-immigrant and so xenophobic. And think of how different this country would have been in the last 10 years. I mean, it's the same thing with like Abraham Lincoln getting shot, right? Like, and then Andrew Johnson comes in, who's a drunk, admitted to himself and other people around
and
him,
a racist.
He never should have been president. Like, how different.
Well, and that's kind of the thing with Arthur, right? Like the Garfield picked Arthur, was basically forced into picking Arthur to be his vice president, basically because the New York political machine was just so like the Republican Party's politics and the money that they made was so dependent on the Port Authority in New York City. Because like, what was it, like 25% of like literally everything in the country was imported through New York City. So like just an insane amount of power. And then Arthur was like kind of like a henchman who just gets thrown in because they obviously can't make the real big boss of the New York political machine the vice president. And then there's that scene at the end of Garfield where the Secretary of State and then the boss guy that like, didn't get they both ran for president, didn't win or whatever. And, they're just like, we tried so hard for this to happen to become president, and the presidency just lands in this idiot's lap, And again, it's just like flukes of history,
Mm-hmm.
I kind of want to talk about the political machines a little bit because I just find that like a very funny, amusing part of history. Like how many, like in the 1880s, 90s, like Arthur put together a lot of reform. Credit to him. They had such a spoils kind of patronage system where your guy got elected, so he just gives jobs to everybody that maybe did some illegal and immoral things to help him get elected in all of the states and stuff. But it's funny because like the political machines in the big cities were kind of like mafias in many ways. And, like basically you had a lot of immigrants coming into the country, and then you could have like ethnic bars or saloons that would, just invite everybody, give free meals, give free jobs, help solve problems. But like despite being kind of a pretty corrupt thing that especially on the high end with all the money and all the big bosses and machines, but like on the low end, it really did. Like those machines were able to like pave roads, build schools, fix problems in the community, kind of like the mafia would, in another generation. But any thoughts on the political machines and just how much our culture has changed?
A little less so than the mafia, but no, it is interesting. Like the lack
they had that
of
kind of like paternalistic, at least, it solved more problems at the local level than any of our federal politicians do now,
Well, I mean, it's kind of what you were talking about earlier about like allowing log rolling again and letting members of Congress just shamelessly shill their own district and get public
Yeah,
money to
right.
go to stuff. I mean, I mean, in the 1800s, especially in the second half, like the federal government didn't do anything, right? That we would think about. Like the federal government was so inactive in people's lives. Like I think that book I was reading about prohibition, it was talking about how like the only real interaction that the average American had with the federal government was like mail people because like all the USPS or
Yeah,
whatever.
right.
I guess it wasn't called that back then, but like the postal service people were federal agents, and like that was like the federal government to unless they had like the Army Corps of Engineers or whatever, and some engineers come and build like some roads or something. But yeah, most people had no concept of that. So then like the idea of the machines basically, unethically bribing people and giving them free alcohol and meals and little and jobs here and there um, for votes was like, they were able to do things and create meaningful change in people's lives that I don't think would have happened otherwise. Like if you look at the 1800s, like the federal government wasn't about spending sums of money to improve people's lives in a very progressive way. And a lot of those people, the I'm still reading that book, but like you're seeing like that like era shift from the old style politics of the basically the 1880s and 1890s to essentially going into the 1920s and 30s. It culminates in Franklin Roosevelt, where the culture of Americans has
Yeah.
totally changed, and people believe that the federal government can do something progressive
And
in a
should,
positive,
yeah.
yeah, meaningful way in their lives.
Yeah, that's kind of an interesting idea. It kind of goes with something that I thought about. I read an article talking about how it's interesting how people vote now, where it's like the booth where you go in alone and it's the private vote. But prior to like the 1880s, like it was pretty common for just everybody to vote. Like basically, like some of those machines were just like, hey, we're throwing a giant party. We got a bunch of kegs of beer. Come get beer and just vote for all of our candidates and we'll all party. And so everybody kind of knew who everybody else was voting for. Or you'd have the caucus room where like literally like the entire town's in one room and you can see everyone dividing up on the sides of the room and voting that way. But it wasn't until I think it was like Wilson in like 1912 or something like that was like the first presidential election that like more places were doing the private voting rather than the giant public spectacle,
Oh, that's
kind of
interesting.
arguable bribe off for votes. But just imagine how much that changed our political culture, just going into this like silent booth where you can never admit to anybody who you voted for.
Yeah, well, it's interesting too because like part of and that's really interesting about the Wilson election being the first time more people voted by secret ballot. But one of the other things that's interesting is just what was I going to say? I just lost my
And about
train
the
of thought.
machines or
But
something.
yeah, but
Yeah.
great
Here's
contribution
an
to the.
yeah. Here's an idea I was thinking about. It's very true that like elections are, I guess politics in general is so hard to gauge public opinion because when you think about it, every 4 years that we have a presidential election, that's like a sample size of one. It's like one snapshot of the electorate. And because every 4 years the population changes so much, like going from 2020 to 2024, like how many baby boomers died versus how many Gen Z and Gen Alpha turned 18 and were like able to vote for the first time, right? Like that's 4 years of death and, new voters coming in. Like there's so much population change in cities and even whole states within 4 years. And certainly if you go back to like 2016 versus now, like the country that elected Trump the first time is very different than the country now that elected him a second time, like 8 years later, right? After 2016. But it's just kind of interesting that everyone's just kind of winging it with like their idea of what the electorate is. You get all the politicians who are like, I believe the American people believe this and it's everything that I believe and the American people are with me and they get all that. But it's like, you really don't know. And it's like, you get like all these things of like enthusiasm from voters. So even the public opinion doesn't really matter because the only thing that matters with elections is the public opinion of the people who leave their house and actually go vote, right? Like the entire country has a totally different politics than the, voting population, for instance. But
Yeah, I mean it's
any
interesting.
thoughts on that?
Yeah, I mean you're like trying to govern a country of 340 million people. What at like 60 something percent vote. So like if you think of like out there in the ether somewhere is like what every American wants, and then our ability to pull that and what we see in elections is such a small sample size
Yeah.
comparatively, and it's so imperfect too because like um like if you go out and like study fish and like how big is this species of fish, you just go measure a bunch of fish and it's one thing on, a 2D scale. And it's like, okay, you can have a pretty good idea of how big that sample size and the mean of the total population. But you can't do that with politics because like there's so many individual things. Like you have people who like, I only vote on guns. And it's like, okay, power to you. I don't agree with that. But and it's like the people like, oh, I only vote on abortion, like for or against. And it's like, so then when you're like, oh, the American people support this war of aggression in Iraq, you know what? It's like, how do you know? Like,
Yeah.
it's absurd to think
Right.
about, right? And then it's like, there's another thing where like, they, you poll, pollsters, the way you word questions can change people's answers. And a very tricksy pollster can get wildly different results by the way they stress questions, the exact word
Right.
choice and stuff, any emotions or feelings they evoke beforehand. And like they do all these studies, and even like the studies they do on them are pretty shitty because like you sampled like 14 people who responded this way in a psychology study. Like that's not a good study either. But all of that stuff basically combines into like, yeah, that's a good point. You don't know what Americans want. People are like just making shit up. I believe the American people want this. It's completely arbitrary. And like if you can't go by polls, it's also people are like super myopic and fickle too. And so like, people say, oh, I'm against immigration, but then like what does that mean? Even if you don't like immigration or you want fewer immigrants, like probably most people you start dropping off and losing a lot of people off the bandwagon. It's like we're going to get ICE and have a paramilitary people harass people in the
Yeah.
streets.
Right.
Like the average person doesn't like that. And then you get into, well, like, this is something I've talked about a lot basically, like to what extent are people really paying attention and to what extent, like, if you want to convince the American people of something, like, is it fine to convince 10% of people, the thought leaders? Like, how can you're never going to get 340 million people to know something. Like if the president really wanted every American to know one thing, and he spent, $100 billion to inform the American people. It like, 3 months later, you'd have 4% of people be like, I don't even know who the president is. You know what I mean? And
Yeah.
it's like the
Yeah.
same thing with like polls after 8 years in the last like month of an 8 year president's time in office, people like, what's your opinion on Bush? No opinion. And it's like,
Yeah.
really?
Yeah.
In
Undecided.
January 2009, you don't have an opinion of George W. Bush?
Right.
But yeah,
No, that's true. I had one little thing I wanted to highlight. Just I'm so annoyed with Donald Trump constantly saying I inherited a mess because like if you look at like if you compare the mess of the country from 2021 when Biden took over with the kind of economy and the COVID shambles, like a bunch of people still dying daily and weekly from COVID
a
and
9/11
just
of people dying every single day from COVID.
yeah.
Yeah.
And just like all the chaos Trump caused, both from his presidency and, of course, the political chaos from like January 6th and the insurrection attempt. But like like, no, of course, the media, like, no one calls him on it. I'm just like, you're a dumb bitch. You did not inherit a mess. Certainly not. Like Biden handed off the country and like we had all these manufacturing deals going on. We had this like all this spending going for like renewable green energy. Like the economy had largely bounced back, like all the unemployment numbers and job growth numbers that Trump immediately started taking credit for was like Biden's economy. So just a pet peeve of mine that like the media, like Trump is lucky that he lies and is wrong about so much because you just can't get into the weeds on every single thing he says. So like, normal
That's his
people and
genius. It's the
journalists,
weave.
yeah. Journalists just have to like kind of ignore like most of what he says. And, even though a lot of it's like filled with just bullshit and lies, but let's see. Congress is a do nothing. This kind of goes back to that union thing. And it's like, again, I'm not willing to die on this hill, but maybe our politics should start having like saloons and bars and just a bunch of parties to get people involved and maybe like start building roads and like, getting money. And like, it's like that idea of, the politicians rob, but they rob for us. Like right now with like no earmarks and there's no pork barrel spending, you get all these people that do all the stock trades constantly and they're just enriching themselves. But it used to be nice when you had politicians that actually wanted to be like local heroes in their local communities and, build the bridge or build the community center or, like get
Well,
some
I wonder
funding
about
for
that.
whatever pet project.
I wonder about that. I wonder if to some degree it's easier to build the sewers if you don't have any. It's easier to pave roads if you don't have any. Like to some extent, like what services would they provide? Like the federal government's probably not going to buy or build like hundreds of thousands of like community housing in New York City. So like what would you envision like if they build infrastructure like bridges and they redo train stations and stuff and train tracks. Like what would you envision them doing if they could do that stuff?
I think in terms of like, like right now, the Congress has like passed almost no legislation, right? They were literally closed for 40 days. They had a full trifecta of government and couldn't even keep themselves open, right? But like, I think back to the idea of like, remember when all the campaign ads in like 2006, 2004 were always about like this congressman person spent, this amount of money on this vote that wasted this much money. Like the bridge to nowhere in Alaska is a perfect example of that. But like, right now with our infrastructure crumbling across the country and no one having an ambitious plan to do anything like big other than Biden, which he got shit on for trying to do that. But like, maybe it's not a bad thing that like, it's like Cincinnati, that bridge, for example, that was like dilapidated and is like, so much of the economic, so much of the economic vitality and health of the region was like one bridge over one river across from Cincinnati to like Covington or something like that. And like, is it a bad thing that like maybe you could get a Republican to vote for some infrastructure plan built by Biden if you just said, fuck it, we'll give this congressman like $400,000, like, I don't know, $40 million, whatever the money is for the Mitch McConnell Cincinnati. Mitch McConnell's a genius politician, bridge over Cincinnati. And it's like, is that the worst thing to happen? You build a bridge just to like grease the wheels, kind of to finally like basically bribe the congressman to do something for his constituents and the country in general.
Well, I mean, ethically, yeah.
I'm not going to die on this hill. I'm just saying, between zero and like nonstop graft, maybe we should be somewhere in the middle, not like all the way at like zero pork barrel spending.
Yeah, I mean, the alternative we have right now is where the president himself gets billions of dollars and the American people get nothing. That's a bad trade. So yes,
that's true. But but even that, it would be nice if Congress like have the balls to be like, fuck the president. The money starts and ends with us. We are in charge of every penny, and the president's not getting any penny for this dumb like White House restoration or this like we're not giving any money for ICE to have tanks or something in the streets or whatever. It's like obviously inevitably going to head toward. Let's see. I have a thought here. We should be a little more alarmed that the MAGA base is like really getting suspiciously Nazi, right? Like Nick Fuentes and Tucker Carlson are like buddy. Lindsey Graham recently was joking that he's in the anti-Hitler wing of the party. And then he's like, what's this stuff about Hitler? I think Hitler's a bad guy. And it's like, shouldn't that not be a controversial statement for Lindsey Graham to say? Like, shouldn't there not be a pro-Hitler wing of the, contemporary Republican Party? And then you get the idea of like,
it shows the asymmetry between the political parties, I think, which is a very valid point. That, while there are probably people who are like, yeah, Stalin wasn't that bad, they're like freaking idiots on Twitter who like do not have positions of power, let alone like are running the Democratic Party. And it's like, say what you will about like AOC, like she's not like saying that Mao Zedong and Pol Pot were like great people. You know what I mean? But then you have people who are like actual positions.
Yeah, Pol Pot had some good ideas.
yeah. So I don't know. It's an asymmetry, and it's not fair. It's really annoying, and it's if you have to joke that there's a pro-Hitler part of your party, that's fucked up.
Well, it goes through their policy. Like you get JD Vance, the Haitian immigrants in like some city are eating the cats and dogs. And then they're so against immigrants. But then right now we're like giving like total carte blanche for like any white South African to come over. So it's like you hate immigrants except these white ones that came from a very racist, xenophobic country historically. So like that's not on the level. And then you get a lot of commentary right now about the Jews. And this is kind of something that's a little unfortunate because Israel is kind of getting shit on both sides of the spectrum. One, because like Republicans have a Nazi problem that hate Jews and are incredibly anti-Semitic. But then on the left side, you get the anti-Zionist, anti-colonialist, like kind of anti-APAC money dominating politics kind of faction.
It's a lot of misinformed people. Like they brought up a good example. It's like when they had the ceasefire and then Hamas went in and just started shooting a bunch of Palestinians for no reason that like was readily available or apparent, other than they may have been like against them or something. Like you didn't hear anyone like complaining on the left about like, oh, those poor Palestinians. So I think it's a weird argument. It's not a weird argument. It's a weird topic because like everybody is misinformed and presenting bad faith arguments. Like if you are super like adamantly
Israel specific or like growing anti-Semitism in America, particularly on the right.
I mean, I guess it's both. Like just the amount of like ahistorical shit people believe, conspiracy theories, just the fact that you would treat whole groups of people for like, I mean, one weird thing is like if you're going to be anti-Semitic in America, it doesn't really make sense because like the Jews here are not controlled by Israel; they're like Americans, and like the whole idea that like I don't think you should be treating any group of people based on what you think some other group of people who look like them or believe the same things as them in a different part of the world believe. And I don't know. It's like if you're in it, I don't know. Once you start with like just blanket anti-Semitism, like it's so stupid. Is it even worth discussing? Like, what are you going to discuss that people are like hopelessly misinformed? They're hopelessly racist. They're hopelessly bigoted, and like they're just presenting bad faith arguments. Like, I don't know.
Well, I mean, I guess that's part of the problem. Like, you get this weird thing where they act like Jews or like this, like non-white people, which you get really wrapped around the axle when you're going into like whether like, like is Seth Rogen a white person? Really, like this distinctly like demonic group of people that hate America and like want, like when I watch Seth Rogen movies, I don't think that's informing much of his worldview and perspective in day-to-day life, I guess. But
Well, I mean, it's like everything. Everything becomes hyper partisan in this country on cultural issues, and everything becomes coded left or right. And then it's like both the left and the far left and the far right now are like coding like the same shit in opposite ways, just like we do for cultural issues, but they're doing it for everything in the world. Like every religion gets coded, every group of people gets coded. People talk about the left as like the oppressor and victim, kind of coding. The right does like the good people, the bad people, like the obvious bigoted framing. You know what I mean?
yeah,
And like, I mean, it's
yeah.
just so stupid. I don't know. I don't. I don't know if I have much more to contribute than like if you ask me what I think about rising anti-Semitism in America, I think it's retarded. Like all those, like if you're that bigoted, like you're just acting retarded. And I know you're not supposed to say that either, but it's pretty retarded to be a super bigot for no reason.
Yeah, I guess that's true.
Do you share that opinion?
Speaking of casual bigotry, Jesse Waters, I think it was like today or yesterday, he was describing Marco Rubio. He said Marco Rubio is like your Mexican friend that works a lot, but is really funny. And it's just funny that it's like Fox News, like Jesse Waters, like even when he like, I guess ostensibly likes Marco Rubio, one, he calls him Mexican when he's Cuban. Two, talks about it's like that stereotype of Mexicans like being hard workers. And then, but it's really funny. So, just kind of funny. It's like that waspy kind of idea of just like not really respecting immigrants and like minorities enough to even know whether they're Cuban or Mexican, and just like
Why
kind
is
of
that?
like standing.
To be fair to the wasp, is that really a waspy thing specifically, or is it just like you're anti? I don't know what it is. Like you're just like
I think
low
no,
key bigotry on
I
TV.
think it's a waspy Fox News kind of thing to just be like so casually ignorant about it, but then speak about it in such a like folksy, everyone knows what I'm talking about. Come on, guys. We're not bigoted. We're just all friends. It's like I have Mexican friends, and it's
Yeah,
like, oh, all
Marco
your friends are
Rubio.
actually Cuban. Yeah, Marco Rubio. Yeah, right. Uh, I just wanted to highlight that I thought that was funny. And it's like kind of the idea that like if you're like kind of if you're a minority group that gets high up in the Republican parties, you never quite are really respected, I feel like, by a lot of the people, especially, like certainly like
Yeah.
Donald Trump, JD Vance, Does JD Vance want all Cubans to be able to come here? Or would he prefer that we not do that?
I mean, again, it's just like all that bigotry is stupid. Like all those people, like like the whole idea that like women are inferior to men. Like why would we like just have 50% of the people just not have the same opportunity? That's stupid for a country, for an economy, for a society, right? Like all these problems. It's funny you see this all over the other places in the world. We call it out and say it's like terrible, but like there's so many people who believe the same thing here. I don't know. And I feel like it's rising because people are becoming more just like blatantly ignorant about stuff. I think people are being more closed-minded, like whether it's conspiracy theory people, like we talked about this last time, the people who believe that like Winston Churchill may have been the bad guy in World War II. And it's like that is such a stupid thing. It's like, how do you engage with it? And it's like even if you engage with it, their counterpoints or rebuttals will be so more misinformed and bad faith. It's like I don't know what to say about it. Like you're asking me what I think
Yeah.
about Jesse Waters, and it's like he called a known Cuban a Mexican and said he's funny, and it's like I don't know what to say about it other than like there's just a lot of stupid people in this country, and
Yeah.
like they're not dumb, like idiotic. They're just acting dumb. They're acting in bad faith. They probably know better. and most people have an ethical core they're probably violating in their sick, giddy group chats that they just, are super racist and bigoted in.
Yeah.
I.e.,
Oh,
all of the grassroots in the Republican Party, right?
yeah. More or less. I wanted to do this. I wanted to ask you, how would you steel man Pam Bondi, Trump's, like if you were being the most charitable to Donald Trump, how would you steel man his
That's the same.
argument about?
That's the same point I'm making. Like,
I guess you're
why don't?
right.
How do you
Right.
steel man the bigots who believe that Jews control the world and American Jews are bad? It's like I have nothing to steel man that with.
I guess that's fair. How about this? You were in the military. What do you think about Pete Hegseth's rebranding of the Department of Defense as Department of War?
I mean, it's silly. Like, I don't know where it came from. I don't understand it. If it's really a one-off that Trump thought, oh, we should go back to the Department of War. I mean, it's like, what if you called, like, if a Democratic president was going, if Biden was going senile and said, we should call the Department of Agriculture the Department of Yum Yum? Like, would you have the entire Democratic Party like, oh yeah, he's really bringing farmers back?
Let's spend $2 billion changing every nameplate and label on every piece of paperwork and every doorway of every office.
Yeah,
Department of Yum Yum. That's pretty good.
Yeah, it's like the change of like the Gulf of Mexico to Gulf America. Like, it's trivial. It's like, I don't know if the American government should be running policy on feel good like thoughts. I don't know. Like,
yeah, talk about virtue signaling. Yeah, right.
I mean, what virtue is that? There's no virtue signaling.
I guess no. The virtue that we're war fighters. We kill people. We don't defend peace around the world. We will bomb boats in the Caribbean.
Well, I mean, that's like the whole idea of deterrence, right? You deter people so that you don't have to kill them and brag that you're a bunch of killers. Like, it's like, right. Speak softly and carry a big stick. You don't carry a big stick and say, I'm going to kill you all with my big stick.
Yeah.
I don't know.
I have one more note here I want to talk about. Just the idea. I made a joke about this at a satirical headline that Barack Obama was suing Donald Trump for $50 billion for all the birther stuff. And I've been doing a lot of satire like that, where it's like, I'll say something that should be happening and just tweet it out as if it is happening. Like, I had a bunch today about like reporters, like, calling Trump piggyback or like, insulting him and saying you got bigger tits than any, female journalist in the room for, that he's calling them piggy and stuff like that. But he's like a giant, just fat piece of shit. But don't you think Democrats should? I feel like Democrats should take my suggestions. Like, shouldn't Obama just like steal a bunch of attention and just waste Trump's time and make him go nuts by suing him for the birther stuff? Shouldn't Hillary Clinton call him Captain Cankles every day on social media and just like make him go deranged? Like, why are Democrats like to this day like doing everything by the book, by the norms, with decorum, and like everything right now? Trump has proved like the only thing that matters in politics is attention. That's the only thing that matters. So why are they not doing things to just get attention for themselves in the same way? Like Gavin Newsom has been doing great at this, and it's very popular, and it's making a lot of headlines. It's getting a lot of conservatives' attention as even making them kind of grapple and contemplate just the the idea that they hate it when a Democrat does it, but they love it when Trump does it. Like, there's a lot of value in doing this.
Yeah, I think previous presidents should open a lawsuit for every lawsuit Trump does. Trump sues like ABC or whatever for that like allegedly doctored video from the debate for an election that he won. Like, fucking Obama should sue. Hillary Clinton should sue. Clinton should sue. Like, just open the same like stupid, pointless slap suit lawsuits against Trump that he does.
Yeah. Anyway, any last thoughts? Anything you want to add about the news of the week?
News of the week? No, not really. I think we covered it.
All right. Good to talk to you. Thanks for listening, everybody, to Brain Milk with Adrian Polk. Check out the Halfway Cafe. I post daily a lot of comedy and a lot of serious commentary. You can become a paid subscriber for $2.50 a month. That's a pretty good rate, don't you think? You don't even pay, I bet. But you're not a paying subscriber. Halfway Cafe. All right. Thanks for listening, everybody. Have a great rest of your night, and we'll do it again sometime in the future. See you, everybody.